When it comes to serial killers like Bundy and Dahmer and so on, I usually avoid featuring them on Mad Lads since they are pretty mainstream and there isn't really anything I could say that hasn't already been said. But sometimes I come across one whose story is so strange that I just have to talk about it. Now, most murder victims don't want to die, you'll be shocked to hear. But that wasn't the case with today's mad lad. His victim wanted to die, and this mad lad obliged him, and not for the usual reasons that serial killers have for wanting to kill. Today's mad lad did it because he was hungry. Armin Meiwes, also known as the Consensual Cannibal. And a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get into the mad lad, a big thank you to Displate for sponsoring this video. Displates are metal prints that are super high quality and easy to mount. All you need to do to put it up is apply the magnet to the wall and physics will do the rest. And not only are displates easy to mount, but there is also a massive variety available with millions of officially licensed designs to choose from. Displate has all the franchises that you know and love covered, including some of my personal favourites such as Cowboy Bebop, Fallout and fine art. There is something for everyone. So if you want to start your own collection of the things that you're a fan of while supporting my channel, you can click my link down in the description to get 26% off of 1 to 2 displates and 36% off of 3 or more displates. And you can also click the link down below to check out some of my other favourite displates. The discount at the link down below is only available for a limited time, so make sure you get in there fast. Armin Meiwes was born on the 1st of December 1961 in Essen in West Germany, and he had a relatively normal early childhood with his mother, Waltrand Meiwes, his father, and his 2 older paternal half-brothers. When he was 3 years old, Armin and his family moved into a 36-room manor house in the small town of Wusterfeld near Rothenburg, where very few children lived. Unfortunately, when Armin was 8 years old, his father abandoned him, leaving him with no one but his mother in the big, massive, empty house. Armin's home-breaking had a devastating effect on him and left him with a feeling of loneliness that would haunt him for years. Armin went on to have a bit of a Hansel and Gretel obsession throughout his childhood, which was only made worse when he read Robinson Crusoe. You will be able to figure out the link later. As a result of his isolation and broken home, Armin desperately wanted a little brother to compensate for the fact that he was starved of attention. He ended up creating an imaginary brother named Frankie, who Armin would confide in about certain urges that began to develop as he grew up. At around the age of 12, Armin's fantasies seeped into the real world, with his loneliness manifesting itself as a desire to make his school friends a part of him so that they could be with him forever. By eating them. He would also spend a lot of time watching butchers cutting up meat. And if this wasn't enough, Armin also had an interesting relationship with his mother, who became very controlling, even calling him Minchin, which is a girl's name. Luckily, despite his mother's influence and unhealthy clinginess, Armin managed to man up and join the West German army in January of 1981 at the age of 19. As part of the 52nd Armoured Infantry Battalion, Armin realised that he had found his calling and wanted to make a career out of his military service. In fact, the army was such a good fit for Armin that his cannibalistic desires faded as he found purpose and camaraderie amongst his fellow soldiers. This newfound sense of belonging also meant that Armin, at long last, wasn't lonely anymore. He even managed to get a girlfriend for a while, but the relationship didn't work out as he realised that he was gay. Depressed about his failed attempt at what was considered at the time to be a normal relationship, Armin became a bit of a drinker, which sadly ended his military career. After 2 drunken car crashes, Armin left the army in 1993 and moved back in with his mother in Worcesterfeld. Right back where he started before joining the army, Armin looked after his mum full-time alongside his day job as a computer technician. But while he'd left the environment that had saved him from his previous troubles, Armin had the perfect replacement. The internet, which had just become mainstream. Armin quickly found a second life for himself online, where, as everyone inevitably does because of Rule 34, he became a man of culture. Armin's adventures on the internet led to him stumbling across internet forums dedicated to increasingly niche stuff. Eventually, finding a forum for gay cannibals. A forum for gay cannibals. It's the internet. There's something for everyone. And on this forum, Armin realised that he wasn't alone. There were others here that shared his fantasies. On these forums, he would roleplay with the other users and share images of people shaped out of marzipan that he had slashed up and photoshopped to look like butchered animals. While this was going on, Armin's mother had a fall in 1996 and became even needier and more domineering than ever. But nevertheless, Armin dutifully looked after her until she passed away on the 2nd of September 1999. Armin was finally free. He no longer had to put up with the inhibition of prying eyes and expectations from his mother. So, Armin did what anyone would do when their parents aren't home. He decided to invite someone over and make his fantasy a reality. Armin began his search for a person to eat by posting an attraction ad on the Gay Cannibal forum. In his ad, he asked for a handsome and muscular 18 to 30-year-old girlfriend-free boy that wanted to be eaten. Despite the fact that he was asking for people to volunteer to die, Armin actually had several men answer the ad, and he met up with them in person to roleplay cannibal scenarios in hotel rooms. They even discussed how they wanted to be cooked. But Armin always let them go before it came to the actual cannibalism, because his dates always changed their minds. Now, despite planning to break the Fifth Commandment and the German laws against murder, Armin was not willing to violate the NAP. Any very strange hang-up that most killers do not have. In Armin's mind, his victim absolutely had to consent. And if they did not consent, or if they changed their mind and withdrew consent, then Armin would stop immediately and cancel the entire plan. But this wasn't the only reason why Armin refused to eat most of the people that came to him. It turned out that Armin was quite picky. One guy was rejected for being too fat, which is strange because you think a cannibal would be into that. Another was rejected because Armin didn't feel like there was enough sexual chemistry between them. And he also rejected one very enthusiastic applicant because he wanted to be nailed down and beaten to death. And to Armin, he thought that was just a bit much. Armin wasn't a fan of Scottish cuisine and didn't want to batter his meal, so he turned down the man's offer. He also said that beating the man to death would be weird, because despite getting horny over the idea of eating a man, the line seems to be drawn at tenderising the meat. I mean, yes, he did want to murder someone and eat them, but you know, the man has boundaries. Despite the difficulty of his search, Armin finally found the one. A 43-year-old engineer named Bernd Brandes had sent Armin an email with "dinner" or "your dinner" as the subject line. The email read, "I offer myself to you and will let you dine from my live body. Not butchery, dining. Whoever really wants to do it will need a real victim." Obviously, it would take a special kind of person to willingly be killed and eaten. And like Armin, Brandes had his own share of issues. Brandes also had serious parental issues and was really into pain. His self-destructive streak even went so far that he would beg his ex-partner to cut his penis off. Well, now he could live out his fantasy. He was so into the idea that he even suggested that Armin should use his head as an ashtray. Because German. Armin and Brandes would grill each other over email, buttering each other up and discussing all of the saucy details of what they planned to do together. As the pair got to know each other, the heat was turned up and their chats got increasingly spicy. The sexual tension between them sizzled until it reached a boiling point, and Brandes was whisked away to Rothenburg, with Armin excitedly awaiting the arrival of this absolute snack. To prepare for the big day on the 9th of March 2001, Brandes sold all of his stuff, wiped his computer, took a day off work and bought a one-way train ticket from his home in Berlin to Kassel, where Armin met him at the station. Armin drove Brandes to his house, where their dinner date was to be held. When the two men entered the living room, Brandes took all of his clothes off and said, "I want you to admire your dinner," which was soon followed by the two men having sex. But after Armin was done with basting his meat with his special sauce, Brandes got cold feet. Obviously, this was very disappointing for Armin, but he agreed to drive Brandes back to the train station. Except they never made it there. Brandes had a partner back in Berlin, and he knew that selling all of your stuff and disappearing to cheat on your significant other with no intention of returning is pretty dodgy. Brandes knew that there would be one hell of a confrontation if he suddenly went home like nothing had happened. So he decided to go through with the plan, because dying was apparently easier than getting caught cheating. So the couple went back to Armin's house, grabbing some sleeping pills and cold medicine from a chemist along the way. Back in Armin's house, Brandes downed 20 sleeping pills, half a bottle of cold medicine, and half a bottle of schnapps. It was time to get this show on the road. Brandes told Armin to cut off his penis, and Armin obliged. Except his kitchen knife wasn't sharp enough, so he had to get a second knife to finish the job. As you would expect, some over-the-counter remedies and some Dutch courage are not an anaesthetic. So Brandes wasn't doped up enough to not feel it. According to Armin, he screamed for about 20 to 30 seconds after the amputation. But afterwards, apart from the profuse bleeding, Brandes was fine. His fantasy of receiving the ultimate pain and having his penis cut off had been fulfilled. Now it was Armin's turn for some fun. Armin cut Brandes' penis in half for the two men to eat. But Brandes' Wiener Schnitzel was too chewy, so Armin tried to fry it with some garlic to make it more palatable. However, he ended up making a dog's dinner of it. Literally. Armin burnt the penis. He burnt the penis, and after he and Brandes realised that it just wasn't edible, Armin fed it to his dog. At around 9 PM, Brandes got cold, so Armin ran a bath for him so that he could bleed out in comfort. Armin sat in the next room and read a Star Trek novel while waiting for Scotty to beam Brandes up to the afterlife. Armin also checked on him every 15 minutes. After around 2 hours in the bath, Brandes tried to get out and collapsed due to blood loss. So Armin took him up to the bedroom. 4 hours after the initial amputation, Armin, with much hesitation, finally cut Brandes' throat. He then hung up the body on a meat hook and got to work on butchering the fresh corpse. And then it was dinner time. Armin wanted to make his first time special, so he took great care to make it a meal to remember. He opened a bottle of South African red wine and got out his best cutlery, ready for a nice candlelit dinner. For the main course, Armin took a slice from Brandes' back and fried a rump steak with potatoes and Brussels sprouts. And that's just honestly the most disgusting thing I've ever heard of. Who the fuck likes Brussels sprouts? Armin said that the first bite of human flesh was very strange, as he was finally fulfilling a fantasy that he had had for almost his entire life. According to Armin, his memory of Brandes got stronger with every bite he took, which he said tasted like pork, but stronger and more robust. Armin also ground the meat into mince and made meatballs. Armin enjoyed his meal very much, and this event was obviously a very big deal for him. So it was only fitting that he had the perfect thing to remember it by. At Brandes' request, Armin had recorded the entire affair, from the penis amputation right through to the butchering process. After dinner, it was time for the washing up. Armin buried the inedible parts of Brandes' body, such as the hands, feet, and internal organs, in his garden. He then packed up the rest of the meat and put it in his freezer, hidden by a false bottom that was covered by the most cunning of disguises, a couple of pizzas. Armin also kept the video of the butchering process and would pleasure himself to it from time to time. He even became a bit of a chad in the Cannibal forums as he recalled his experiences with his fellow weirdos. But considering how this was a fantasy roleplay for the majority of the users, no one really looked twice at Armin's claims. They thought it was all just a LARP. Until he got too big for his boots. Armin had enjoyed the experience of eating a person so much that he decided to do it again a few months later. But unfortunately for Armin, finding a willing victim turned out to be just a flash in the pan, because despite making new ads and meeting up with 5 men, Armin struggled to find another meal. Ultimately, Armin's second course would never arrive, as he was caught in December of 2002. An Austrian student stumbled upon the Cannibal Cafe forum where Armin, under the username Frankie, was taking applications for people to eat. Obviously, someone seeking a human meal contrasted quite a bit with all of the LARPers saying, "Eat me daddy, ooh woo." So the student went, "Holy shit, this is fucking real," and called the cops. Armin was arrested and his house was searched by the police, who found the freezer full of body parts and the tape that he and Brandes had filmed together. In total, Armin had eaten around 45 pounds of human flesh over the year and a half since he'd killed Brandes. As you would expect, the public found the news of what Armin did very hard to digest. So there was a huge media circus around his trial, especially since it was Germany's first ever cannibalism case. What made the trial even more sensational was the fact that prosecutors didn't know what to do, because cannibalism technically wasn't illegal in Germany. But it wasn't too long until they figured out how to throw the book at Armin, and he was charged with murder for the purposes of sexual pleasure and with disturbing the peace of the dead. One of the main pieces of evidence used in the trial was the 4-hour-long tape that Armin and Brandes had made together. But only 19 minutes were shown behind closed doors because it was just that messed up. Showing any more than necessary would have been in poor taste. In the end, Armin was convicted of manslaughter on the 30th of January 2004 and sentenced to 8.5 years in prison, much to the dismay of pretty much everyone. Armin was naturally rather salty about going away for, in his mind, doing nothing wrong, and the German public couldn't believe that he wasn't convicted with straight up murder. They wanted to see Armin fry. In 2006, a retrial took place where Armin's manslaughter conviction was overturned. Armin insisted that he did nothing wrong because he had killed Brandes with his consent. However, this time the jury took the sexual motivation for the killing into account and sent Armin to Horny jail. His conviction was upgraded to murder and he received a life sentence. The fact that Armin still had cannibalistic fantasies and was therefore a risk of reoffending didn't help with his case. And with that, I think it is now time to address the elephant of a philosophical question in the room. But what if my dinner consents? Since Brandes consented to being eaten, did Armin do anything wrong? And as a libertarian, I know what a lot of you want me to say, but Brandes' consent didn't count for shit. Not just because he was off his tits on sleeping pills and booze, but also because he almost certainly was very mentally unwell. And you don't need to have a PhD or, a degree in psychiatry or any other type of field that studies the human mind to come to the conclusion that a man who willingly wants to be killed and eaten just might not be of sound mind. And if you are not of sound mind and you are mentally unwell, then you cannot give consent to such a thing. And Armin took advantage of this instead of offering Brandes any help. So, I am sorry to disappoint you, but yes, Armin got what he deserved. Considering the content of Armin's story, it comes as no surprise that he has been quite influential in the metal scene, having added some flavour to the music of Ozzy Osbourne and Marilyn Manson, and inspiring the song Mind Tile by Rammstein, which is an excellent song, by the way. For obvious reasons, he has been referenced in an episode of Hannibal, but the most famous nod to Armin was the episode Moss and the German from the IT Crowd. But in terms of references on TV, I think that the nerdy German named Armin that ate a guy in Attack on Titan was just a coincidence. So, where is Armin now? Well, he was most recently denied parole in 2017, so he's still in prison, where he works in the prison laundry. And fortunately, not the kitchen. And in his free time, he likes to read and is a member of the choir and art group. Obviously, he has had a lot of time to reflect on what he did, and he was so regretful that he decided to turn over a new leaf. The leaf being the one on his plate. He's a fucking vegetarian now. He's a cannibal that became a vegetarian. The fallout from literally eating a man left such a bad taste in Armin's mouth that he just doesn't eat meat anymore. Armin is pretty much a model prisoner and is described as friendly, outgoing, and polite, with his lawyer even saying that he is, and I quote, absolutely manageable and one of the few prisoners with whom there are no problems. A prison official even said that if you left Armin's cell door wide open and unguarded, that he would still be there when you get back. In fact, Armin is so well behaved that they are letting him out on day trips, where he just goes for walks around town. Obviously, for security reasons, Armin is taken to a different state and supervised by 2 cops. He is also given the most cunning and foolproof of disguises, the 1000 IQ kind of disguise that is only used by the most successful spies, a cap and some sunglasses. But if they are so willing to let Armin out under supervision, could this mean that they are testing the waters for getting ready to release him? I mean, they can't be right. The man literally killed and ate someone. But on the other hand, there are psychologists that believe that he is sane enough to control his urges. After all, he isn't really interested in eating meat anymore, and he genuinely regrets what he did, going as far as to want his story out there to prevent any copycats, and saying, and I quote, they should go for treatment so that it doesn't escalate like it did with me. But even if Armin is rehabilitated and allowed back into society one day, I think it's safe to say that he will never have a normal life again on account of his infamy and the nature of his crimes. I mean, his dating life is certainly over, since I can't imagine anyone being brave enough to put their dick in his mouth. Oh, it's folded over. This is the perfect image of my political career.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube! Everybody should subscribe!